From the outside, most of us look like we're doing fine. We're capable, we're reliable, we're keeping everything together. Whether that's in your career, motherhood, in caring for others, showing up for your society, or just the relentless efforts of trying to figure out what's next. And that comes with pressure, constant pressure, quiet pressure, the kind of pressure that builds up so slowly that you stop noticing. Now, a lot of that is real. We are strong, we are capable. But internally, sometimes it doesn't feel like that. In fact, for some of us, it feels like we're just holding it together. There's those moments where your heart is racing, your chest is tight, you can't switch off, and you start wondering, why am I feeling like this when everything looks fine? I want to share with you a moment that has changed everything for me. A few years ago, I was traveling for work, and for the first time, I flew business class. Now, I say this not to impress you. I say this because at the time, that felt like proof that I have made it. I have achieved something that I had been chasing all my life. I flew to New York, and my family joined me for a couple of days. We had a beautiful time together, and then they came back to London, and I stayed through the work with my colleagues. We went out for dinner in the evening, so I kept myself busy, distracted. Looking back, that was exactly the point. Now, for the second part of my trip, I had to fly to Chicago. But this time, I was alone. Family, colleagues, no distractions, just me and the room. And of course, throughout all of this journey, I have been posting on social media, living the life. But internally, I felt somewhat empty. I remember I kept thinking, I've made it, so why am I not enjoying this more? And then on one of my lunchtime walks, suddenly my heart started to go a little bit faster than usual. My chest felt tighter than usual. I couldn't really get a breath in. My eyes started to water. I couldn't walk. I didn't know if I needed to ask for help or if this was going to stop. I was on my own on the streets of Chicago, and I was really scared. I didn't understand what was going on, and I never felt out of control like that. And of course, nobody knew that because they were seeing the photos, and I was letting everyone, including myself, believe that everything was fine. But the reality is that I have been running under enormous pressure for a long time. I had multiple projects running at once, constant change, and tight deadlines for years. And I knew something was off because I couldn't sleep properly and I was always on edge. So that moment was not the beginning. It was just the first time that I couldn't ignore it anymore. That panic attack was a sign. My body, even when I was trying to ignore it. Now, your version of this moment might look completely different, right? It might have happened in your kitchen, not on the streets of Chicago. Maybe it was after a school run or in the middle of a meeting or at 2 a.m. when you wake up and you couldn't explain why. The location, the situation doesn't really matter. What matters is that moment. The moment when you realize that although everything looks fine on the outside, there's something deep down inside of you telling you a very different story. And I see this again and again with the people that I work with. They look like they're doing well, but internally they feel stuck. It's like they're lost their confidence in themselves. And it's not because they're not capable. Of course, they are capable. It's because they have been running so fast for so long that they lost that connection with themselves. And when we do that, what do we do, right? We lost that connection because we are chasing, always chasing the next promotion, the next responsibility, the next decision. There's no real sense of pause, just movement. And after a while, that can start to feel like you're stuck in something that you can't get out of. And what did I do in that instance? Well, I pushed harder, tried to be stronger, stay in control, keep going. Because I thought, if I handle things better, surely this feeling would go away. And the thing is, for a while, this strategy worked. By being capable, reliable, the one that figures things out, I kept going. And I didn't leave this cycle in a clean, intentional way. I was forced to leave that job. But if I hadn't, probably that strategy that was working so beautifully for me would have started working against me and take me to my limit. Because when we don't change the approach, we just apply more pressure. So by applying more pressure, we try harder, we try to stay in control, hoping that eventually things will settle. The pressure doesn't disappear. Okay? Life doesn't get less demanding. We just get better at pretending that we can handle it. Right? There's always going to be something. Work, family, uncertainty, change, grief. It's the invisible load of being alive in this world. And there's also the world that we live in that is chaotic, fast, demanding. It's a lot. And feeling like that, it's not a failure. It's just part of being human. So the question isn't, how do I remove pressure from my life? So the question is, how do I stay steady while I navigate this? How do I respond instead of react? And that shift from reacting to responding doesn't happen by pushing harder. No, it happens when you stop and try to understand what's going on inside of you. And so when I left that job for the first time in years, I had space, space to think, space to feel, space to recognize what have been building inside of me for so long. And what happens in our bodies is that your nervous system, right, the part of your body that is designed to protect you from threats, has been switched on for so long without a real chance to step down that starts to see everything around you as a threat. That's what sustained pressure does to you. It keeps your system on long after the moment has passed. And your brain doesn't know the difference between the deadline and the lion. It just sees, this feels dangerous, stay over. And when you're in that state for months, sometimes years, without really realizing what's going on underneath, the exhaustion, the reactivity, and the feeling that somehow you're failing at your own life, looking around and thinking, how is everyone handling this better than I am? Those are not signs that something is wrong. No, they are signs that your system has been working over time for too long without a reason. Most of us are not shown how to recognize this, let alone do something about it. So, for example, now, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. And let's all take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And I know some of you will be already thinking, Claudia, I don't have time to stop. I don't have time to think. I know, I hear you. I was that person, okay? And I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be honest with you. Stopping is going to be hard, or it's going to be uncomfortable. But that small pause, that little tiny thing that you can do is something that most of us don't allow ourselves in a full day. And that small pause, that's where you, over time, will be able to find some space again, some clarity. Now, I'm not here today to give you a solution, but I want you to leave with a question instead. So I know that you have a notebook. If you want to take that out and just write this question down and maybe come back to it at the end of today, at the end of the year, all the weeks, maybe speakers are in a couple of days when the information has sent is. So the question is, when was the last time that you actually stopped? And stopping doesn't have to mean anything specific, right? For some people, yes, it is mindfulness, breathing, meditation. But for others, it's dancing, music, a walk, a conversation. It's anything that brings you back, away from tension and back to something that feels a little bit more open, a little bit more spacious. So when was the last time that you actually allowed yourself that small pause? Not scroll, not plan, not think about what next. Just stop without having to earn it. Because that question, if you read it, can be the beginning of something very different. And you don't have to have all of the answers right now. You just need to remain curious to understand what's going on inside of you. And something tells me that if you're here today in this room, willing to sit with that question, you have already started.